Hello, everybody. We're going to do the last three mechanisms of our unit today in this video. The first mechanism we're going to go through is the lead screw. You can see the screw-like shape right here. All right, it's the main part. And then we have this part, which is a slider, which would move on the lead screw as it goes. I'm going to watch that. Let me show you how this one works. We have our motion right here, and the first question you guys have is, what is the input motion? All right, you can see I'm turning the handle. That's the input motion. And this is the output motion. All right, when we look at that, that's the output motion as it goes across. So what they want to know in the first question is the input motion rotary, reciprocating, or linear? The second one, is the output motion rotary, reciprocating, or linear? Remember, reciprocating is going back and forth in two directions, and linear is going in one direction. The last one says, is the direction of travel reversible? So now when we try to push on the output, can we make that input move by pushing on the output? I am trying to push on it right now, trying to pull it back towards in this direction. And when I do that, can that output make that input move? All right, that's the first mechanism. The second mechanism is probably a little bit of the weirdest of the mechanisms that we're going to go through. Now when we look at this, I want you to understand what we have here. This isn't going to be easy. I want you to understand what we have here. We have this little device right here in the center. This is the actual mechanism, and this is a universal joint right here. We have our input shaft on this side and the output shaft on this side. But this little device is the mechanism, and I know it's much different than the other mechanisms we worked with. Now in the first question, it talks about, is the speed increased, decreased, or constant? And what we're talking about is the speed from the input shaft to the output shaft. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this. All right. Is there anything that's making it speed up or slow down, or is it staying the same from the input shaft to the output shaft? Remember what we talked about with speed and torque. What happens to torque in this setup? All right, is torque increased, decreased, or constant? All right. The next question, what's this ratio from the input shaft to the output shaft? All right. Is there a change in speed, or are they moving the same? And what do we know about ratios when we talked about that one? And then the last question is, does the input shaft turn in the same or different direction as the output shaft? So does this turn in the same direction as the output shaft from here to here? All right. Now what I want to do is I want to show you why we use this mechanism. It might not seem obvious at first if you're not used to using mechanisms. One of the things you can see with this is I can bend this part up and down. When I bend this up, I can still turn this. When I put it down straight, I can still turn this. Even if I put it, it won't work so well that way, really up high, it still turns. So this is the real reason why we have a mechanism like the universal joint. It allows us to transfer our motion, but it allows us to do it at a changing angle. All right, that's the universal joint. And then the last one, and this is one you guys have seen before in class, is called the crank and slider. Okay? When we look at this, this is our crank right here, and this is the slider over here. All right? So the first question is just that. Kind of give me a description of the crank and the slider. The second question, what's the input type of motion? Well, the input is on with this handle. All right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the handle. What's the input type of motion? This is the input once again. What type of motion is that? The second question is the the output system. What type of motion is the output of the system? So when we look at this, what type of motion is that? All right, I'm not changing the direction of the input. And look what happens to the direction of the output. Okay, and the last question, if the radius of the crank were increased, would the slider move shorter or longer? So what that means is the radius, the distance from here to here was increased. Would it move shorter or longer? Tell me what you think on that one. All right, so there are our mechanisms. Make sure you do your best to answer those questions for us. Have a great day.